Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, the contents of our today's lecture are: today we'll discuss the transients in series RL circuit, because understanding of the transient behavior is important in order to understand the short circuit analysis and the different component of fault current that is required to select the rating of circuit breaker. Then we discuss short circuit currents. Here we discuss in detail the short circuit current type of a synchronous generator. Whenever fault occurs in power system, current is supplied by the synchronous generator, because synchronous generators are the source of electrical power. So they supply to the load as well as to the faults. And the third thing is type of short circuit faults. Here we categorize faults into different types and see what is the advantages that we get by their analysis of different type of faults. So what is their advantages and applications of performing these fault analysis. And at the end of the lecture we also perform the fault current calculation. So here we use the Z-bus method to calculate the fault current. So that's why understanding of Z-bus of power network is also important. So initially we discuss Z-bus of power network, and then we learn how to apply the Z-bus of power network for the calculation of three-phase short circuit fault current. So these are the contents that we covered today. If you have any question regarding the topic that we will discuss today, please note down your questions and ask during the live class session. So let's start. So first topic, transients in series RL circuit. So I will cover this topic from chapter number 10, Power System Analysis, by J.J. Granger and W.D. Stevenson. So this one is actually topic number 10.1 from that reference book. To study transients in series RL circuit, first we consider a very simple case where we have a pure inductive circuit, as you can see here in the diagram. In this circuit you can see we have an inductor connected across a voltage source through a switch. When we close this switch at time t is equal to 0, the voltage source will establish a current into that inductor, that is also a time varying current. Now here we see what will be the waveform of this current when we close the switch at time t is equal to 0. This is the equation for the current and voltage across the inductor. So current is equal to 1 over L integral of the voltage that we have applied across the inductor. And other way around, the voltage across the inductor is equal to L di by dt. Now if the voltage applied across this inductor has a sinusoidal waveform, as you can see here, this is vertical axis, voltage axis, and here we have a sinusoidal waveform which is starting from 0 and rising to maximum positive peak, then come back to 0 and negative peak, and then in this way we complete the cycle. So this axis is the voltage, horizontal axis is the time. Here I want to share my past experience. I had asked this question many times from my student in past. So I gave this simple circuit that an inductor is connected across a voltage source through a switch. When switch closes at time t is equal to 0, this is the voltage waveform applied across the inductor. So what will be the waveform of current? So as current lags behind the voltage in an inductor, so the obvious answer from the student will be, sir, there will be a current which is lagging behind the voltage by 90 degree. When I ask them to come on the board and draw the waveform, almost in all sessions I have taught in past, almost every student who came to the board to draw the waveform has drawn a waveform that I show you here on the slide as well. So they have started waveform in this manner, which is lagging behind the voltage by 90 degree. So current is lagging behind the voltage, where you can see At the zero crossing of voltage, current is at its negative peak. At positive peak of voltage, current is at zero crossing, and so on. So that is a 90-degree phase difference between them. I didn't disagree with you people that this will not be the current. But problem is here, answer one question. Is it possible that at time t is equal to 0, when we have closed the switch, the voltage was 0, means no voltage across the inductor, and current is at its negative peak? We have maximum peak value of current, although in opposite direction. Is it possible? It means there is something wrong. So here we want to clear this concept. What happens when a switch is closed to the inductor? Look at the equation of current. Current is 1 by L integration of voltage applied across the inductor. So integration of any function means the area under the curve. So it means very easily we can draw this waveform by considering the area under the curve of voltage waveform, which is this black one. So here let's see how to draw the actual waveform and then see what is difference and what is the concept behind current lags behind the voltage, from where we got this concept. I hope you are understanding that there is something wrong with this waveform. So let's draw a waveform. So let's mark different point on this voltage waveform. The positive peak, the negative is the zero crossing, where voltage waveform will move from positive to negative cycle, the negative peak value, and then we have next the second zero crossing. So here the current will be area under this voltage waveform. So here you can see as voltage is rising from 0 to the maximum, area is also rising, as you can see from this red color waveform. Okay, so now voltage will start decreasing from peak to the zero value, but area under the curve will still rise because area under that positive cycle is increasing. So that's why beyond that point current will keep on increasing. So here this is the area under the curve of the positive cycle, and current has actually equal to that area under the curve, and that will be scaled by a factor of 1 by L. And then as negative cycle will start, so this negative cycle will cancel out the positive cycle, so area will keep on reducing, and when we complete the voltage cycle here at this zero crossing, so you can see clearly the total area under the curve will become 0 because positive cycle portion and negative cycle portion are equal, so they will cancel out each other. So this is the integration of first cycle of voltage waveform, and this will be the waveform of current through the first cycle. And next we can see the next cycle starts, so this will be the repetition of this sequence. So current waveform for next cycle will be similar to this one as the first cycle. So now look at this current. It does not change its direction. It starts from 0, rise to the maximum value in positive direction, and then come back to 0. Although it look like sinusoidal, but it is completely offset in one direction. We can say it is DC, not alternating current. It is not changing its direction. So this is actually the combination of AC and DC. So the component of DC in that AC is so high that it has completely offset waveform in one direction. So that's why it has become a pulsating DC, where current remain in the same direction. This will be the current through this inductor when we close the switch at time t is equal to 0. Is it not interesting that we have applied voltage across the inductor, that is sinusoidal AC voltages, but the current through that inductor will be completely DC, although not steady DC, but pulsating DC. It does not change its direction. So this is a DC current, pulsating DC current. Oh, here we answer it why it is so. To answer this, the reason behind why we have a DC in that current, let's see another situation. At the time when switch has closed, let's assume if the applied voltage has this waveform, where you can see the voltage is starting at its positive peak, then reduces to 0 and enter into the negative cycle, come back to 0 and then become positive. So that is the same voltage as above, but this time when we close the switch at time t is equal to 0, the instant on voltage waveform was as that voltage was passing through its positive peak value. So this is a situation. Because when we turn on the switch, voltage waveform can be on any instant. We cannot determine it. Okay. So that could be the positive peak, negative peak, zero crossing, anywhere between peaks and zero crossing. So voltage could be at any position. So we have assumed this second situation, that voltage is starting from its positive peak. Now if we apply the same method to draw the waveform of current that will pass through the inductor that we had used in above case, current is equal to area under the curve. Here we can see here in this waveform, the area under the curve will keep on increasing from the time t is equal to 0 up till the point where the voltage waveform is crossing the 0. So here is the waveform. We start, it will keep on increasing until this point. Now here the voltage waveform has entered into negative cycle. It means the area under the curve in this situation will cancel out the area under the curve in positive portion of that cycle. So it means the overall area under the curve will start decreasing. So it will keep on decreasing until we have reached at the time where the voltage is at its negative peak. Here we can see starting from time t is equal to 0 up till this moment, the two areas, positive cycle area and negative cycle area, are exactly equal. So that's why net area has become equal to 0. Then we can see here as we move further from negative peak to the 0 crossing, area will rise but in negative direction. So it will be maximum until we have reached at the 0 crossing of the voltage waveform, where it is entering from negative to the positive portion of the cycle, and then again it will keep on decreasing until it will become 0, and it will become 0 exactly at that moment where we had the positive peak of the cycle. So cycle was started at positive peak and ended at positive peak. So this is the complete one cycle of voltage waveform, and here we can see the current. So let's complete this waveform by keeping the same pattern. This is the waveform of current. Here it is interesting to note, now if we compare these two waveforms, in second case the current waveform does not have any DC offset. It is perfectly symmetric about the time axis. So here we can see the current is exactly behind the voltage by 90 degree. As we have learned in our previous classes that current lags behind the voltage by 90 degree. Now here we can answer the question initially I have asked, why there is a DC offset in the first case and there is no DC offset in the second case. So obviously it depends upon the switching instant on voltage waveform, whether there will be a DC offset or not. Remember, in first case switching took place at the 0 crossing of voltage, so we have a maximum DC offset that has completely offset current waveform in one direction. And on the other case, in second case, switching took place at the peak value of voltage waveform, and we can see here there is no DC offset in the current at all. So it means that is the instant on voltage waveform that will decide how much DC offset will be there in the current. Obviously, if this switching will take place at the second 0 crossing of voltage waveform, where waveform was entering from positive cycle to the negative portion. So if that will happen, then this current waveform will completely offset in downward direction. We have a maximum DC component but negative magnitude. Similarly, if switching will take place at negative peak value of the voltage waveform, again current will be perfectly sinusoidal and there will be no DC offset here. Current will be symmetric about time axis, and this is the reason. So now keep this thing in mind. Whenever switching will take place, the instant on voltage waveform will decide how much DC offset will be present inside the current waveform, and that is due to the inductor. So this is the behavior of inductor, how inductor work across the sinusoidal applied voltage. I think you have got the idea behind this concept of transients in inductors. So here up to this point we have just discussed the DC offset, reason of DC offset. Now we have seen the concept of this DC with the help of waveform. Let's verify the same thing with the help of equations mathematically. So if the applied voltage Vt is equal to Vm sine omega t plus phi, here Vm is the peak value, omega t is the time varying portion. As t will change, this angle will change, so sinusoidal will change its magnitude, and this angle phi is instant on voltage waveform at the time of switching. So it means in the first case, when the switching took place at the zero crossing, so this phi will be 0. Okay, and in second case we have seen in previous slide, the switching took place at positive peak where the value of phi was 90 degree. Now we will see that the current through that inductor will be the integration of voltage, this voltage waveform, voltage equation with respect to time. So here is that expression, current is equal to 1 by L, time varying voltage integrated with respect to time. So here if we substitute the value of that voltage into that equation, so that will give us the result equal to Vm our inductance, which is a constant. Vm is also the constant value. So the integration of sine omega t plus phi will be minus cos omega t plus phi over omega plus k. This k is the constant of integration. If we put the initial condition in this equation to find out the value of k, here is the initial condition. At time t is equal to 0, as there was no current before the switch was open, inductor was completely de-energized, so current IT will be 0 as well at time t is equal to 0. And when we calculate the value of k, that will become cos phi over omega. Let's substitute this value in above equation. So we get here the value of I equal to Vm over omega L. Omega L is also known as inductive reactance XL, minus cos omega t plus phi plus cos phi. Here in this equation, this factor cos phi is known as DC offset, and you can see here its value is dependent upon only angle phi, which I have initially defined as instant on voltage waveform at the time of switching. When switching took place at the zero crossing of voltage waveform, then when the phi was equal to 0, so this cos phi was 1, we have maximum DC offset having magnitude equal to Vm over omega L. On the other hand, when switching took place at the positive peak, this angle phi was equal to 90 degree. So cos 90 is equal to 0, so that's why there was no DC offset. So here exactly our previous discussion that we have done based upon the waveform is in accordance with its mathematical model. So here this cos phi factor describes the DC offset. Now we discuss here onward what will be the impact of resistance, because we know that there is no such thing as pure inductor. Pure inductor is not possible unless we have inductor made of an ideal conductor. So ideal conductors are not possible, so that's why pure inductor is not possible. There will always be a series resistance involved. Let's we add the resistance in series with that inductor. So as soon as we close the switch at time t is equal to 0, a current will be established by this voltage into this series RL circuit. If we write the equation for this single loop circuit, the applied voltage Vt will be equal to the voltage across the resistance IR plus voltage across the inductor LdI by dt. If we substitute the value of that voltage that we have defined in our previous discussion, Vm sine omega t plus phi, here this is the first order differential equation. If we solve this differential equation, so solution of this differential equation for I of t is equal to Vm over z sine omega t plus phi minus theta minus e raised to power minus RT over L sine phi minus theta. So here we have introduced new terms in this equation which does not appear directly in above equation. Let's see what are these new variables. Here Z is the R square plus omega L square under root, which is impedance of the circuit, and theta is tan inverse of omega L over R. That will be the angle known as impedance angle. So these are the two new things that has been involved in above equation. In previous case, where we have assumed a pure inductor, so if we put the value of R is equal to 0 here in the term this Z, that will become Z will become equal to omega L that we have seen over there, and then the theta is equal to tan inverse omega L over R. So here the tan inverse will become 90, theta will become 90, impedance angle was 90 over there. If we substitute 90 in above equation, so that will become sine term will become a cos term. Same thing will happen with the second portion after negative sign. Now if we analyze this equation, again we can see here there are two parts of this equation. First part, sine omega t plus phi minus theta, that is a sinusoidally varying component, and the second part is exponential component, where exponential component is decaying with time, because we can see the power of that exponential is minus RT over L, and sine phi minus theta, that is the DC component. What had happened? Due to the addition of a resistance, this resistive part will dissipate the DC component inside that current, and that DC will become a decaying DC, because in this circuit, if we put the value of R is equal to 0 in the power of that exponential, that will become 0. So e raised to power 0 will become 1. It means that DC component will never decay. So when we have added the R, so R will cause a decay in that DC component. So it means now the presence of resistance will dissipate that DC component from the current, and current will become symmetric about the time axis after passage of few cycles. So this happens practically. Whenever we close a switch, the current will start flowing through an inductor that will have a DC offset depending upon the instant on the voltage waveform at which switching has taken place, and then that resistive part of the circuit will dissipate that DC component and current will become symmetric about time axis. So that condition is known as steady state condition, where DC has completely dissipated. In that steady state condition, current in an inductive circuit lags behind the voltage, as it is combination of RL or a resistance and inductance. So that's why that angle will be slightly less than 90 degree, but it will be lagging behind the voltage. Now here I will show you the waveform of current that will be there in the circuit. Here you can see in this waveform, initially when switching will take place, current will always start from 0, offset in one direction due to that DC offset, and DC offset is decaying with the passage of time, and current will become symmetric about time axis after passage of few cycles. So how long it will take to become symmetric? It depends upon the ratio of resistance to inductance. Now here we can summarize our discussion regarding the transient in series RL circuit. In a series RL circuit, when we apply voltage across that circuit, so there will be a current through that circuit which will have a DC component, and that DC component will decay with the passage of time. How much will be the magnitude of that DC component? It depends upon the instant on voltage waveform at which switching is taking place. In case of pure inductive case, we have seen that if switching is taking place at 0 crossing, we have maximum DC offset, and if it is occurring at the peak value of voltage waveform, we have no DC offset. But in case of RL circuit, that switching instant at which we have maximum or no DC offset has been slightly changed, because this time that DC offset is equal to sine phi minus theta. It depends upon two angles, instant on voltage waveform and impedance angle of the circuit. So it means these two angles will decide what will be the instant on voltage waveform at which we have either maximum DC offset or no DC offset at all. If you have any question regarding this concept of transient in series RL circuit, note down your question and ask during the live session. Let's move to the next topic that we will discuss here, short circuit currents. Okay, here we discuss what happens when a short circuit occurs in power system. Remember one thing, we have discussed that there will be a transient whenever switching will take place. Short circuit is also like a switching, where either whether we turn on a system or turn it off, or a fault occurs, or there is a fluctuation in voltage, increase or decrease in voltage. All these moments are switching moments. So whenever switching will take place, there will be a transient. So here when a fault occurs in the system, voltage will make a jump from the normal value to a lower value due to short circuit. So that will bring a transient in whole system. Let's see what is the nature of current in that situation. So when fault occurs in power system, current is supplied by the synchronous generators, because synchronous generators are supplying to the load connected to the power system, and definitely when fault occurs they will also supply towards the fault as well. So it means the major portion of fault current will come from the synchronous generators. These are the source of electrical power. There are other sources of fault current as well. For example, large size induction motor can contribute towards the fault, or some induction load which is present in the system can also contribute towards the fault current, but that portion is very small or almost negligible as compared to the major contribution from the synchronous generator side. So it means synchronous generators are the source of fault current. Now here in this article we will study the behavior of short circuit current when we put a short circuit across a generator, how the current will flow. Definitely behavior of the generator, it will be a combination of a voltage source in series with the inductor. It will be similar to our discussion in previous topic, that there will be a DC offset and current will become symmetric about time axis once the DC offset will decay down with the passage of time. So here we discuss this thing. Let's say we have a three-phase generator as it is shown in the diagram. So phase A, B, C, these are three terminals. So here we have shown the DC field winding. So field will be on the rotor. The magnitude of field is controlled with the variable DC. If we operate this generator in no load condition, we have the rated voltage at the terminal. So that could be achieved by controlling the excitation. If we put a short circuit across the terminal of this generator, so definitely this will be done in the lab. This test will be performed on all the synchronous generators, because we need the parameter of generator. As in case of transformer, we perform is short circuit test and open circuit test to find out its losses and its equivalent circuit, its parameters. Similarly, such tests are performed on the generator as well. So here this is a test that we perform on the generator. A three-phase voltage fault will be generated on the terminal of the generator, and the waveform of current will be observed. So definitely due to that fault a heavy current will flow. So that current will has two components. First a DC component and an AC component. And if we remove that DC component from the current waveform, the AC component is shown over here in the diagram. This is the AC component of current. We have removed the DC component. This graph is known as oscillogram of the generator. So this oscillogram gives us the parameter of the generator. Let's see which parameter we can obtain from this oscillogram. So the symmetrical component, or you can say AC component of that fault current, is bit complex as compared to a simple inductive circuit. Here you can see this waveform initially has very high magnitude. It is decreasing with the passage of time and attain a steady state value. That doesn't happen in case of a simple inductor. Okay, so this is a bit complex phenomena due to the distribution of magnetic field inside the synchronous machine, due to which this happen. Now we describe this thing, what is happening over here. Okay, if we look at this graph, there are three sections of this graph. At the start, in first cycle, we can see here the current magnitude is very high and the rate of decay of current is also high, which can be seen from an envelope, the line which is joining the peak of the first three peaks. Then it comes to another section where the rate of decay of current has slightly decreased, and then this current will become steady. There is no further decrease in magnitude. So these three sections of this oscillogram are known as the subtransient, transient and steady state section. So right after the fault, This first cycle and first few cycle belongs to sub-transient section, and then after that transient period starts, and then after the transient period steady state period starts. During the sub-transient, the magnitude of or the peak value of that current is extremely high and its magnitude decreases at very high rate. Then it moves into the transient section where the rate in decrease in the current magnitude reduces, but it is still decreasing. Then after the passage of many cycles, that could be 50 cycle, 1 second or more time depending upon different machine, it will attain a steady state condition. Now in steady state condition there is no further reduction in current magnitude. So first cycle current is known as sub-transient current that exists in sub-transient period. Second current is known as transient current that exists in transient period, and the last current is known as steady state period where current does not further decay and becomes steady. So it means the short circuit current in a synchronous generator has three different sections or the three different types: sub-transient, transient and steady state. Now whenever a fault occurs in a power system, as the current is being supplied by the synchronous generator, so initially very high current will flow, then this current will reduce to transient, and then we have a steady state fault current. So these three currents are very important because in sub-transient and transient period our protection equipment respond to the fault. For example, our equipment installed in power system must be capable to handle this high amount of current in sub-transient period and must be capable to interrupt this current during the transient period. Next, these three currents are attributed or described with the help of synchronous generators three different type of reactances. Because the induced EMF behind these three current is same, induced EMF depends upon the excitation. Excitation does not change, the field current does not change. So if field current is fixed, induced voltage is fixed, and current is taking three different values, that will be due to three different reactances in the path of induced EMF and the fault. So these three reactances are known as sub-transient, transient and steady state reactance. We will see in later lectures what is the purpose of studying the sub-transient, transient and steady state current. Now let's see how to do that study. If we want to analyze a sub-transient current, then we will have to develop a sub-transient model of the synchronous generator, and if we want to analyze the transient behavior of the system, then we will have to model with generator with its transient model, and if we want to analyze the steady state behavior of the system, then we will have to represent the generator with the help of its steady state model. Here we see how to develop different models. So here this is the first model where we can see an induced EMF in series with its reactance JXD. This is the steady state model, and if we replace this XD with XD dash, that will become a transient model, and if we replace that transient reactance with sub-transient reactance XD double dash, it will become a sub-transient model. Here obviously in steady state, transient and sub-transient model, these reactances XD, XD prime and double prime. So these reactances are respectively steady state, transient and sub-transient reactance. As we know that current is maximum during sub-transient period, so reactance will be minimum in sub-transient, and it will be minimum in steady state. The reactance will be maximum in steady state. So these three models exactly represent the sub-transient, transient and steady state condition. Now for example, if I put a short circuit across the steady state model, if I connect the two ends, the current established in this single loop circuit, that will be equal to steady state current value. Okay. Similarly, if we put a short circuit across the transient model of this generator, so current established in that loop will be equal to transient current, and if I put a short circuit across the sub-transient model, the current established will be the sub-transient current. Now here we will define what is mean by that sub-transient, transient and steady state current. So let's see the relationship between these three impedances. As we know that sub-transient current is highest, then we have transient current, and then we have the steady state current. So in the same way, Sub-transient impedance is the least one, then transient impedance, and then we have steady state impedance. This steady state impedance is also known as synchronous impedance. The question is, what will be the value of these three reactances and how to obtain these three reactances? The purpose of this oscillogram is to obtain the value of xd double dash, xd dash and xd. So these three are known as parameter of synchronous generator. As we have the leakage impedance and magnetization impedance of transformer known as a parameter of transformer. So these three reactances are known as parameter of the synchronous generator. So here with the help of this oscillogram we calculate the value of these three reactances. Once we had the reactance, we can replace these reactances in these three circuits that I have shown on the right side to get the steady state, transient and sub-transient model. Okay, next thing, starting from the steady state value. So from this graph we determine the peak value of steady state current. Here on the vertical axis you can see from the origin O up to A. So this is the peak value of steady state current. This peak value of current will be divided by under root 2 to get the RMS value, and then induced EMF will be divided, or in case of synchronous generator the terminal voltage, in unloaded condition terminal voltage and induced EMF both will be same. That voltage is known to us because before putting that short circuit on the terminal of generator we have set its terminal voltage to the rated value. Same terminal voltage exists inside the generator as induced EMF. Because no current is there, that's why induced EMF and terminal voltage will be same. We know the value of this induced EMF or terminal voltage. We know the value of current from this oscillogram. So voltage divided by RMS value of current will be equal to steady state value of reactance, as you can see here. EI divided by IP, peak value of steady state current, divided by under root 2, because peak divided by under root 2 will give us the RMS value. So this is the value of XD. So manufacturer of generator, note down this oscillogram and find out the value of XD, XD dash and XD double dash and put these values on the nameplate of the generator or in the data sheet of the generator. Now let's see where is that IP current. Here this current is IP, the peak value of steady state period current. Next come to the transient period. Here in case of transient period we can see the magnitude of current is continuously decreasing. So how to obtain the peak value of current? Instead of considering the peak value of current directly from any cycle, what we do, we extend the envelope of that decaying rate, and the point where it intercepts the vertical axis, that is the point known as the peak value of transient current. This is a method by which we determine the transient current. So now from the graph you can see this distance from origin O up to point B, where the envelope of transient current is intercepting the vertical axis. This is known as the peak value of transient current. So by equation, so transient impedance is equal to EI our IP our under root 2. So on the graph you can see here this is the value of IP prime. This is the point of intercept of transient current, and here we have that peak value IP dash. Next we calculate the sub-transient reactance JXD double dash. Next XD double dash is equal to EI our IP double prime divided by under root 2, mean the RMS value of sub-transient current. When we divide the induced EMF with that RMS value, it will give us sub-transient reactance. So how to obtain that IP double dash? That will be obtained from this oscillogram. So point where the envelope of sub-transient period current that intercept the vertical axis, that you can see here, that is point distance between origin O and point C. So that is known as sub-transient current peak value. So here is that peak value. This is point of interception. So this is current IP double dash. So when we divide the induced EMF with that current, it will give us sub-transient reactance. Now we have three models of synchronous generators. Remember, whenever we perform short circuit analysis, we are always interested in the sub-transient reactance, sub-transient model of the generator, because we want to determine the sub-transient fault current, as this current will be used to select the rating of the switchgear that to be installed in power system, that include the circuit breakers, current transformer, voltage transformer, and then the main power transformer must be capable to withstand this current, because such a large value of sub-transient current will produce very strong magnetic forces inside the transformer, so it may displace the windings inside the transformer or even in generator. So these are the design requirement, that the generator, transformer and all the equipment which will carry this current must be capable to withstand this current. Similarly, circuit breakers are designed to withstand this very high initial sub-transient current. Okay, let's summarize our discussion up to this point. So what we have discussed up to this point: short circuit fault current has two parts, a DC component and an AC component. So AC component is also known as the symmetrical part of the current. Okay, so this DC component will be decaying with the time. So and AC component further in case of generator has three components, three you can say periods: sub-transient, transient and steady state. So fault current will be highest during the sub-transient, it will be less in case of transient, and the magnitude will be minimum in case of steady state. Remember, during the sub-transient and transient period, the magnitude of current will keep on decreasing. Rate of decrease is highest during the sub-transient, it will become lesser in case of transient, and there will be no change in the fault current level, or you can short circuit current level in steady state condition. So now asymmetrical fault current is DC component plus the symmetrical component. Actual fault current is known as asymmetrical fault current. So there is asymmetry because current has been offset in one direction, either in positive direction or in negative direction. DC component plus symmetrical component. And symmetrical component further has three parts: sub-transient, transient and steady state. So by the time of steady state, definitely DC component will decay down to zero. During the steady state we have only the AC component. So DC component will be highest during the sub-transient, its magnitude will be reduced during the transient period and almost disappear in case of steady state condition. Further, here I want to mention that at the start of this asymmetrical period of the fault current, where the DC offset is highest and current is passing through, AC component is passing through its sub-transient period. So it means we have highest AC component and highest DC. So that peak value of asymmetrical current is known as momentary current. So it means the very first cycle of the fault current, its peak value is known as momentary current. So circuit breakers are rated based upon this momentary current as well. Circuit breaker must be capable to withstand this momentary current, mean they must not get damaged due to this very high DC plus very high first cycle of sub-transient AC current. And the peak value of symmetrical component, the highest value, is known as sub-transient current. So here this question could be asked in quiz: what is momentary current? Then momentary current will be the peak value of asymmetrical fault current that consists of maximum value of DC offset plus the sub-transient current. Okay, and if I ask you what is the maximum value of symmetrical component, that will be the sub-transient current that occurs in very first cycle. So don't get confused among these two things, because when we are going to use the fault current analysis for the selection of circuit breaker, we are going to use these term momentary current and sub-transient current and radial short circuit current terms like that. I hope I have explained the concept required regarding the short circuit current. Next we discuss the type of short circuit faults. So here we categorize the fault into different categories. So short circuit faults can be majorly categorized into two big categories. So one will be the balance fault, known as symmetrical fault. Other is known as unbalanced fault or unsymmetrical faults. So this is the symmetrical and unsymmetrical fault. Previously in previous slide we have discussed symmetrical and unsymmetrical or asymmetrical current. So there is a difference between them. When we are using this asymmetrical or unsymmetrical term with the current, it means that is our AC component plus DC component. And when we are talking about the symmetrical and unsymmetrical term with the fault, that is a bit different thing. So here we explain that concept. So balanced fault includes three-phase short circuit fault. So this is the only balanced fault. Why we call it balanced? Because in this fault condition, before and after the fault, current and voltage in all three phases remain balanced, mean their magnitude will be equal and phase angle between them will be 120 degree. So that's why these faults are known as balanced fault. And in case of unbalanced and symmetrical fault, there are further three types. The first of them is single line to ground fault, where one phase is involved in short circuit with the ground. Second type of fault is a line to line fault, where two phases, it could be A and B, B and C, or C and A. So if short circuit is between the two phases, that is known as line to line fault. Third one is the double line to ground fault. In double line to ground fault, two phases connected with each other and ground. So it means ground is involved in the short circuit. So probability wise, statistically, the single line to ground fault is the most probable fault, and line to line fault is the least probable fault, a rare fault. Okay, reason because whenever a line to line fault occurs, almost in all the cases ground get involved, so that becomes a double line to ground fault. In rare case it happens that only two phases are involved without involving the ground. Further, the three-phase fault is considered as the most severe fault. So it means fault current level will be highest during the three-phase fault current, and single line to ground fault is considered as the least severe fault. Okay, single line to ground fault is the least severe and the most probable. Three-phase fault is the most severe fault, and line to line fault is the rare fault. So here I have told you about the statistical occurrence and the severity of these three faults. Further, in case of short circuit analysis, we calculate the three-phase fault and single line to ground fault, line to line fault, and double line to ground fault currents. What is the purpose of performing the short circuit analysis? Here it is important to address at this point. Remember, before installation of power equipment in a substation or in the system, we must have the knowledge of the short circuit level, because the short circuit level will be used to decide their rating capabilities. For example, if we want to install a circuit breaker, then we must know what will be the duty of the circuit breaker, how much current a circuit breaker could interrupt in case of fault. Then how could we know that before the installation of a circuit breaker? That will be done with the help of simulation and this short circuit analysis. Remember, the three-phase fault analysis is done for the selection of a rating of power system equipment. Mainly that includes circuit breaker, current transformer. These two are decided based upon three-phase short circuit fault. Okay. Then what is the purpose of performing single line to ground fault, line to line fault, and double line to ground fault analysis? Remember, these three fault analysis, their results are used for the relay settings. So three-phase fault is performed for the rating selection, and single line to ground, line to line, and double line to ground fault analysis is done for the setting of the relays. So the setting of the relays mean what should be the sensitivity of setting, what should be the pickup value of the relays, okay, to detect the fault. So for relay setting we do the unbalanced fault analysis, and for rating selection we do the balanced fault analysis. So here in these few next lectures we will cover thoroughly how to calculate different types of fault in the power system, starting from balance, then we move to the unbalanced fault condition. Let's proceed towards the fault current calculation. Here today's lecture we cover the three-phase fault calculation. So first we discuss the Z bus of power network, because Z bus will be used for the fault current calculation. So you are already familiar with this equation for a 4-bus network. The admittance matrix when multiplied with the node voltages V1 to 4, that will be equal to node current injections. In your previous course, power system analysis, you have studied this model of the power system. So this first matrix, coefficient matrix of admittances, is of prime importance because this matrix gives us all structural information of our power network. In other words, we can construct our network back from this matrix, and similarly this matrix can be developed from the network by just inspection, because all the information how different branches are connected with each other and what is the value of admittance of different branches, that is given in this matrix. Due to this reason this matrix is of prime importance. And you have already seen that we have used this matrix to perform the load flow analysis. Here this is the Y bus, voltage vector and the current injection vector. So the diagonal entries of this matrix are known as the driving point admittances, or we also call it the self admittances. Okay. How we write these diagonal entries of a Y matrix? For example, Y11. Y11 is the sum of all the admittances connected to bus number 1 in the system, whether it is between bus 1 or any other bus or between bus 1 and ground. And similarly Y22 is sum of all the admittances connected to bus number 2. And here these off diagonal entries, Y12, Y13, Y14 up to this one. Similarly we have a lower triangle. So these lower triangle are off diagonal entries. These are known as transfer admittance. So corresponding to driving point admittance for the diagonal, we have a name for these admittances as transfer admittance, or it is also known as mutual admittances. This name is corresponding to self admittance. Okay. This Y bus matrix is symmetric, means upper triangle and lower triangle are same. So transpose of this matrix is equal to the same matrix. So what are these off diagonal entries? So this entry Y12, this entry is actually the negative of admittance connected between bus 1 and bus number 2. Okay. Similarly, for example, Y13, that is the negative of the admittance connected between bus number 1 and bus number 3. It means by just inspection we can write this Y bus from the network. Similarly, if Y bus is given to us, we can develop the network. So this is the information, or you can say the structural information of the power system we can obtain from this Y bus matrix. Now by definition, Z bus of a network is in matrix inverse of Y bus. So here is the Z bus of a network by definition. So it means we will have to use matrix inversion technique to get the Z bus. Okay, for a small system inversion can be done very easily, but if system will become very large and the size of Z bus is huge, then this inversion definitely require too much computational effort. So even for computer that will become difficult to perform this inversion again and again. So many algorithm has been developed to find out Z bus directly as well, but it can be done by inverting Y bus as well. This node impedance matrix is also very useful to analyze the power system. It gives us much more in-depth or insight of the network as compared to Y bus. So it has its own applications. Here in this matrix, the diagonal entries are known as, similar to that diagonal entries of Y bus, these are known as driving point impedances. So further we see what type of information that we can extract from this impedance matrix. And the off diagonal entries are known as mutual impedances or transfer impedances. Remember, as Y bus is a symmetric matrix, its inverse Z bus will also be a symmetric matrix. So Z bus upper triangle and lower triangle will be equal. The entry Z12 will be equal to Z21. So that is a symmetrical matrix. Now the equation of power network in terms of Z bus can be written as Z bus multiplied by node current injection equal to node voltages. If we substitute the values here, this will be the equation. This coefficient matrix is now Z bus. When it is multiplied by the current injection vector, it will give us the node voltage, and here we have the node voltages or bus voltages. Now if we write equation for bus number 2, for example, so this is the second row in that equation will be written as V2. So this one V2 will be equal to the product of this row, second row of this matrix Z bus multiplied by the node current injection vector. So we can write it as V2 is equal to Z21 I1 plus Z22 I2 plus Z23 I3 and finally Z24 I4. In this way equation for any node can be written. Okay, so these are node impedance equations. Previously we had node admittance equation, now these are node impedance equations. Now in this equation, if we assume that the current injection at node number 1, 3 and 4 are 0, mean current I1, I3 and I4, if we assume these three currents are 0, the above equation will become V2 is equal to Z22 into I2. So this implies from equation the entry Z22 is equal to V2 divided by current I2, given that current I1 is equal to I3 is equal to I4 are equal to 0. So now what is mean by this equation? Z22 is equal to V2 over I2. So here if I further explain this thing, this is equivalent to this circuit. Look at this circuit. We have the power network that consists of 4 buses. I have shown only one bus 2 over here. This is a completely passive network. Only branches are there. The impedance is connected between nodes. There is no source here except for bus number 2. At that bus we have an external current injection of I2, so which I have shown with the help of a current source. So this current injection is between node 2 and reference. So this current I2 has been injected into the network. So this current will establish voltage everywhere in the network, including bus number 2. So voltage will be across bus number 2 as V2. If we take the ratio of V2 to I2, that is equal to Z22. Can I say that in this black box power network, I don't know what is the configuration inside this. At one node I am injecting a current and see how much voltage will develop across that node. The ratio of that voltage to current is equal to an impedance, and that impedance is known as Thevenin impedance between node number 2 and a reference. We can write it as V2 over I2. It is actually Thevenin between node number 2 and a reference, and that is equal to, from above equation, Z22. So from this we can say that these diagonal entries are actually Thevenin impedance between that node and the reference. Starting from Z1 is Thevenin impedance between node number 1 and the reference, Thevenin of complete power network. Z22 is Thevenin between bus number 2 and reference of complete network. Z33 is Thevenin impedance between node number 3 and a reference. Similarly at Z44. So it means that diagonal entries in Z bus give us the Thevenin equivalent impedance of complete network between that node and reference. This is the information that we get from the Z bus. This is very valuable information that will be used for the short circuit analysis. So after discussion of these diagonal entries, let's move towards the discussion of off diagonal entries. What is meant by these off diagonal entries? In the same above equation, now if we assume that current injection at node number 2, 3 and 4 is equal to 0, and we have a current injection at node 1 only. So this equation will become V2 is equal to Z21 into current I1, given that, so that implies that Z21 is equal to V2 over I1, given that I2, I3 and I4, these three currents are 0. So what is meant by this equation? How to describe it? Again, with the help of a circuit, I can show you what is meant by this circuit. Here we can see in this network of 4 buses, we have taken 2 buses out. At node number 1, we have injected current I1, and at node number 2, we are measuring voltage with respect to the reference. So the ratio of V2 to I1 is equal to Z21. In other words, this Z21 describes the transfer effect of current injection on one node and voltage development on the other node. Because this current injection I1 at node number 1 has changed voltage everywhere in the network. Okay, so what will be its impact on the voltage of V1 bus 1, that is described by entry, diagonal entry, and what is its impact on voltages of other nodes, node 2, 3 and onward, that is described by the off diagonal entries. So it is known as transfer effect. Injection at one node, how much voltage it will produce on the other node. This is known as transfer effect. So that is determined with the help of these, are described with the help of these transfer impedances. Further, we see in the later slide how to use these transfer impedance for the calculation of the current contributions. So this was the description of entry Z21. Similarly, off diagonal entries 2, 3 describe the transfer effect of current injection at node number 3 and voltage development on node number 2. Similarly, Z24 describe current injection at node number 4 and voltage development at node number 2. So this transfer effect is described by these off diagonal entries. As we have already mentioned that this Z bus is a symmetric matrix. So upper triangle is equal to the lower triangle, mean the value of Z12 is equal to Z21. Similarly, Z13 is equal to Z31 and so on. So these entries are equal. So it means the transfer effect is same. It means if we inject current at node number 1 and see how much voltage is developed at node number 2, the ratio of that voltage to current will be same as if we inject current at node 2 and measure voltage at node number 1. So this means the transfer effect is same. So this is a linear circuit. After discussing the Z bus, now we can use this Z bus for the calculation of fault current. So if I quickly summarize the Z bus, so Z bus when multiplied with the current injection give us the node voltages. If we see the diagonal elements of Z bus, these diagonal elements gives us the Thevenin equivalent of complete network between that node and reference. These off diagonal entries tells us about the transfer effect. Now let's move towards the fault calculation. So fault current calculation for a three-phase fault, we start with starting from symmetrical fault. So in case of symmetrical fault, current calculation will be done with the help of Z bus. For symmetrical fault, all the three phases carries equal current. So for the simplicity, we can develop a single phase equivalent circuit of a three phase. So we use only phase A. Whatever result we get after analysis of phase A, those results can be used for phase B and phase C by just adding a phase shift of 120 degree. Okay, phase B lags behind the A by 120, further phase C lags behind the phase B by 120 degree. It means single phase analysis in case of a balance condition. Single phase analysis will be sufficient to give us the result about the three phase analysis. So now here we see how we can use Z bus for the fault calculation. Let us assume a network of 4 buses. Here is that network. So I haven't shown any source over here. So current injection can also be shown over here. This is just the network. The impedance is present in that network. So here we can see there are 4 independent nodes and a reference node named as 0. So the branch impedance is Z A B C has been mentioned with the help of small z. Small z stand for branch impedance, and in Z bus entries we use capital Z. So these subscript A B C is for branches and subscript 1 2 3 will be for nodes. Now for this 4 bus system, to perform the 3-phase short circuit analysis, there will be an assumption that we are going to use that system is unloaded. Unloaded means the short circuit analysis will become much easier. We will not have to calculate the voltages of different nodes. We assume that all the nodes bus 1, 2, 3, 4 are at same potential. Their voltage are equal in magnitude as well as phase angle. So that's why no current is flowing through these branches Z, B, C, D, F and E. Okay, so current will only exist in branch ZA and ZG, which is connected between node and reference. Reference will be at zero potential and node will be at system potential. So current will be only over here, and the current source, current injections will develop the current through these branches. So I haven't shown, as I have mentioned earlier, any source in this network. It doesn't mean it is passive. It is active network, and the current injections are present at those nodes which have a connection to the ground. So ZA and ZG. So these two nodes are connected to ground and current injections are over there. So I haven't shown that current injection to keep this diagram simpler. Okay. So if we assume that the network is unloaded, system is unloaded, all the node voltages will be equal in magnitude. So V1, V2, V3 and V4 are equal to Vf. So this Vf voltage is defined as pre-fault voltage, voltage that exists on any bus before the fault. And if we assume that system is loaded, then all these four voltages will be different from each other, and we will have to compute those voltage with the help of load flow analysis if we want to perform short circuit analysis on a loaded system. So it means for the analysis of loaded system short circuit analysis, we need first load flow analysis to find out the voltages, and then the result of load flow analysis will be used in short circuit analysis. So it means if we assume system is unloaded, it will make life very easy. All the node voltages are equal and equal to a pre-fault voltage Vf. Now if we assume that a short circuit fault, three-phase fault occur at bus number 2. So this is the single phase equivalent of a three-phase network. So we can show that a three-phase fault on this as a direct connection of bus number 2 with the reference. So that is the short circuit. So as soon as the bus number 2 get connected with the reference, it is equivalent to fault. A fault current IF double dash will flow. So how can we see that this is a subtransient fault current? Remember, it all depends upon the modeling of generator. If we have modeled generator in such a way that induced EMF in series with a subtransient reactance, and then perform the fault analysis and put a fault on the system, okay, so that will become a subtransient fault current. And if we replace all the generator in the system with their transient models, the resulting short circuit fault analysis will become transient fault. And if we replace the generators with steady state model, then the fault current analysis will become a steady state fault current. Okay, remember, as we change that impedance from subtransient to transient to the steady state, it will impact the Z bus of the network. Z bus of the network will change. As Z bus of the network will change, so the fault current will also change. So now here, this is the fault that we have put on the network. It could be described with the help of its Thevenin equivalent. Now we want to have a formula which could be used to calculate this current IF double dash. So we make use of the Thevenin equivalent. So Thevenin equivalent of this whole network between bus number 2 and a reference is given as, we first determine the voltage, Thevenin voltage between bus 2 and reference in series with the Thevenin impedance, and then the fault will be simulated with a closed switch between bus 2 and reference. So this Thevenin equivalent is a Thevenin of above circuit between bus number 2 and reference. If you recall that how we use Thevenin theorem to solve the circuits. So between 2 points, what we determine, open circuit voltage, then the impedance, equivalent impedance. So here we are interested between two nodes, bus number 2 and a reference. So first we calculate open circuit voltage. So that open circuit voltage is V Thevenin at bus number 2, and the impedance of whole network between bus number 2 and reference is Z Thevenin 2. And what we have done with that Thevenin equivalent, we have connected a parallel branch through a switch. So that switch is simulation of fault. When we close the switch, a current will flow IF double dash, that is equivalent to fault current. Now from this single loop equation, we can find out the fault current. First let's see what is this V Thevenin 2. This Thevenin voltage 2 is actually V2 VF, that is pre-fault voltage at faulty bus. Z Thevenin 2 is Z22, so which could be taken from the Z bus directly, that is the diagonal entry of the Z bus at position 22, and IF double dash will be equal to V Thevenin 2 divided by Z Thevenin 2. If we substitute the values, that will be equal to VF divided by Z22. Here we can see in this equation the numerator VF value that is given to us pre-fault condition. The system is unloaded, that will be the same everywhere in the network, and if system is loaded, we will obtain this value from load flow analysis. So it means it is already known to us, VF pre-fault voltage, divided by the Thevenin impedance from the Z bus. If Z bus is given to us, we can find out fault current. We can use this formula to calculate fault current on any bus. For example, if we want to calculate the short circuit fault current on bus number 3, then that will become VF over Z33. If we want to know the fault current level, 3-phase fault current at bus number 1, that will become VF over Z11. If we do the same at bus number 4, it will become VF over Z44. Now fault current contribution. Next thing, as we can see, this fault current IF double dash is flowing out of bus number 2 into the reference. So definitely it is being contributed from the adjacent buses to 2. Mean that fault current is contributed from bus 3, 1 and 4 towards bus 2. And you can see here, these are the three contributions: I32, I12 and I42. After calculating the fault current, the current which is flowing out of bus 2 into the reference, next step is to calculate the contributions. We want to know exactly how much is being contributed by the adjacent buses toward that fault. Based upon this current value, we will be able to do the relay settings. So this is IF double dash. So now how to calculate these values, I32, I12 and I42. So we know that I32 will be equal to V3 minus V2 our branch impedance ZC. Similarly, I21 will be equal to V1 minus V2 over ZD, and I42 will be equal to V4 minus V2 ZE. Here we can see a prime over all these voltages, because these voltages V1, V2, V3, V4 are different from the pre-fault voltages, because these are the during fault voltages. So V1 prime, V2 prime, V3 prime and V4 prime are during fault voltages. Now it means we need these voltages in order to calculate the current contribution. So we need during fault voltages on all the buses in order to calculate the fault voltage. Let's see how to calculate these voltages which are still unknown to us. Now why voltage have changed from the pre-fault value VF to a new value V prime? This is my question, because this question will give us the formula to calculate these changes. So obviously what has changed in the network? The only one change is this hypothetical connection between bus number 2 and reference, that is a fault, due to which a current is coming out of the network into the reference. This is the only change. Okay, so in other words, I can say that this change is due to this current IF, or simply can I mention this thing, The change in voltages on all the 4 buses is due to a current injection into bus number 2, and amount of that current injection into the bus is minus IF double dash. Okay, actually the fault current is flowing out of the bus, but if we treat it as current injection, it will become minus IF double dash. It means a fault current flowing out of the network, its impact is equivalent to a current injection with a negative value into the same bus. Let's see how to calculate that change in voltages due to this current. So this is the current due to which the change has occurred, IF double dash. Change in bus voltage is due to IF can be calculated by using Z bus of the network. How? We know the equation of Z bus, that voltages on all the nodes is equal to Z bus of the network into current injection. Okay, and change in voltage can be calculated by multiplying with the same Z bus with the change in current injection. So the initial voltage plus change will give us the new voltage. So V prime is equal to initial voltage plus change in voltage. Initial voltage formula is given to us, change in voltage formula is known to us. Now how much current injection has changed in the network? What is this delta I equal to? If I write this matrix over here, that is a change in the node current injections. And how much is that? As there is no change in current injection at bus number 1, 0. Yes, there is a new current injection at bus number 2, that is minus IF double dash. And then we have no current change at current injection change at bus number 3. Similarly, no change at bus number 4. So here the change in current injection at bus number 2 is minus IF double dash. Now why we had this minus sign? I have already explained why we had this minus sign, because actual current IF double dash is flowing out of the network. If we want to make it current injection, so that will be minus IF double dash. Let's multiply this vector delta I with Z bus to calculate the change in voltage. So here we have the change in voltages is equal to Z bus into this vector. If we do the multiplication, delta V1 will be equal to the first row of Z bus multiplied by this change in current injection vector. So the first entry and third and fourth entry get multiplied with the 0. So it means only Z12 will take part in that summation. Similarly, when we multiply second row with this column, only Z2 to get multiplied with non-zero value. And if we multiply third row with that column, only Z3 to get multiplied with the non-zero value. So if I summarize here, this product of Z bus with a vector in which only one entry is non-zero, so we can write it as delta V is equal to the second column of Z bus multiplied by minus IF double dash, because only the second column is taking part in this product of matrices. Here if we further write this equation as we have the value of V delta V1, V2, V3, V4, we can use it in our next equation to find out the change in voltages. So that change in voltage will be equal to V1 is equal to Vf minus Z12 IF double dash, Vf minus Z22 IF double dash for delta V2, delta V3 Vf minus Z32 IF double dash, and delta 4 is Vf minus Z42 IF double dash. So now we had the result of the value of new voltages. In this equation you can see Vf is known to us, that is pre-fault voltages. IF double dash we have computed by using the formula Vf over Z22. Next is these entries Z12, Z22, Z32 and Z42 is available to us from Z bus. So in this way we can find out the new voltages, that is known as the during fault voltages. Once we had the value of these during fault voltages, current contribution can be calculated, or branch current anywhere in the network can be calculated during the fault condition. Now look at this change in voltage at bus number 2, delta V2. This term Z22 IF double dash, this term is equal to VF, because we have used the equation IF double dash is equal to VF over Z22. When we multiply Z22 with IF double dash, that will become VF. So here the change in voltage at bus number 2, delta V2, is minus Z2 to IF, and the new voltage will be VF minus VF, that will make it 0. So that is obvious, because fault has occurred on bus number 2. So due to that bolted fault means a fault through zero impedance. Bolted fault will drop the voltage of bus number 2 to 0. So voltage of bus 2 will collapse to 0, and other voltages will also change. By calculating V prime, all the branch currents can be calculated. Okay, if now I start from the very first equation that we have developed. In short circuit analysis, we need two input data points. One is the pre-fault voltages, other is Z bus of the network. Then we can calculate the fault current at any bus. That will be equal to the voltage of that bus divided by Thevenin impedance between that bus and node. Then next thing, once we had the fault current, next will be the current contributions from the adjacent buses. Current contribution can be calculated if we can calculate the during fault voltages. During fault voltages can be calculated by adding the change in voltage due to fault into the initial voltages. Once we had the during fault voltages, current contribution can be calculated. So it means fault analysis, three type of results are required: fault current, new during fault voltages, and current contribution from adjacent buses. In the same way, we can also calculate current contribution from the generator as well. Now this is the end of the lecture. Note down your questions regarding these topics and ask during the live class session. So these handwritten notes will also be available to you in PDF format.